Welcome to the Top Floor Podcast. My name is Darren Kanthal. I'm your host, and today I get to welcome Mr. John Weiss.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. John is the co-founder and CEO of Human Design. And as I normally do, I'm not going to read your bio, John, but would love for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. I've been designing since I was 19. Got my first job at an agency then. And Human is the second agency I've founded. I had an agency up in Portland, Oregon that I sold when I was 29. Worked at a PR firm called Wagner, which is Microsoft's PR firm. Went in-house at WebMD Services, did product design there, and then moved to Boulder, Colorado about 12 years ago. Worked with Chris Porter Boguski, and I left CPB to found Human. And married my high school sweetheart, have 4 kids, live in Boulder, Colorado.
Cool. What are the types of things that you design at Human?
We really work with brands around campaigns and purpose and messaging. So we do a lot of content creation, but really the main thing that we do is purpose-driven positioning. And then we feed that through what we call emotion-centered design, because we're called Human and we believe that everything that really, really matters exists at the emotional level, and that's where decisions are made with consumers. So we work with brands on identifying, what are the things that you really stand for? What are the promises that you're making as a brand? What is the purpose? And then how do you translate that to an emotional connection with your audience? Because that's where they're going to make their decisions of how they want to interact with their brand and how they want to put you in their life. So the type of work that we do is brand strategy, brand design, and then campaign.
I'm going to tell you a little story, then I want to ask you a question because you're hitting on something that I read about some years ago. Let me openly acknowledge marketing, branding, messaging, not my strong suit. I have opinions as I do about most things, but probably uneducated. Nonetheless, I read this article a while ago and was talking about consumer buying habits, I think, or something like, or behavior even. And I think the article was about North Face, and it just so happens I'm a fan of that brand. And what they were talking about is a lot of times brands will talk about, for North Face, for instance, not saying they do this, it's got this level of down and this level of Gore-Tex and all this scientific stuff. And yet when the researchers researched the buying habits and behaviors of the consumer, it was more about, how do I look? Do I like this color on me? Can I see myself, skiing down Breckenridge in this jacket? And it was much more of an emotional connection to the buying. So you talked about tying that emotional element to the branding you do. How do you do that? I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good question. Everything that you're talking about, I would call our mechanics from the brand side. So a lot of brands feel like we need to convey the mechanics and the value of our product through that. It's down, it's warm, the zippers will never lock up, they won't break. Those are all the mechanical things that they do matter to the consumer, but the magical piece matters the most. The magical piece to the consumer is everything you're mentioning. How do I feel in it? Do I feel confident? Do I feel like I look good? Is it easy to get on and off? Is it going to go with the other gear that I have? So really, those two things do matter. But from a brand perspective, the consumers, I, I'll work with our brands and I'll say the consumers really come for your values. Um, and those are the things that they make the decision on. It looks great, it feels great, it gives off a signal that me as an individual, I value certain things, because if I buy North Face, then I value these attributes, quality, sustainability, environmental consciousness, etc. So they will come for the values and they'll buy the product through that, which is the emotional layer. And then where they'll stick around is through the value. That is the mechanical layer. This thing will last forever. You don't have to replace it. It's really warm. So it's sort of values and value. They'll come for the values, they'll stay for the value, but you don't want to sell the value itself. People aren't going to buy the value unless there's not, because even brands are really well known, like Nike, Patagonia, North Face, any brand that people know is very valuable and high quality. A lot of times they're still not really making the decision based on quality and value. They're still making it on emotion and brand, because North Face is some of the best out there, but there's also competitors that are probably just as good. So at the end of the day, if I know North Face is a known brand, I love them, they're very valuable, I know all the quality and all the attributes, the next time I go to purchase a piece of outerwear, I might not go direct to North Face based on the value. It's still going to be based on the values of like, oh, I love the fact that this brand stands for this and they tend to do this. And as a brand, they make me feel a certain way. So decisions are always based through emotion and they're rationalized later through logic.
It's fascinating. I'll share. I want to share another story that you may have heard, and if you don't want to comment on, I totally understand. Truly.
This feels good.
Well, I heard this story about Peloton, the bike,
Mm,
that when they first came out, I'm going to oversimplify the story, but
so,
what I thought I read was that when it first came out, it was selling at like $1,000,
right.
and it wasn't selling great, or at least to their forecast. And I usually say in their infinite wisdom with sarcasm, but in this case, it really seems like in their infinite wisdom, the story I thought I read doubled the price to $2,000 or whatever the dollar amount was,
Mm,
and the appearance of value was then greater, and then they
yeah.
sold more bikes. I mean, granted, COVID certainly helped too, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to touch that or if there's anything to add to it,
Yeah,
but I just thought it was a really fascinating
for
story.
sure. Yeah. There's this idea that brand trumps quality. So price is the first indicator for a consumer of high quality brand. So if I'm looking at product X and product Y on a shelf, um, price, and I don't know much about either product other than they both do the same thing for me. Price is the only overt signal that the brand can send to me of their opinion of their quality. So there's something to be said for things that cost more, have a perceived extra value, and they immediately have this brand pick up in the consumer's mind. Especially because consumers, we all want the best. So if we're looking at two comparable things on the shelf, and this one's $50 and this one's 35, we inherently think the $50 one's way better quality. So now it's forcing me to make the decision of, can I afford that? Because the problem that I have is solved by both of these brands. This one's $50. I'm assuming that's going to solve my problem better. Somewhere along the line, they had better scientists, they had better product owners, they had better materials, but they're doing it better, and that's why it costs more. And because they did it better, that's why the cost is being passed to me. So there is that human perception of cost equals quality. In the case of Peloton, that is a kind of tough one because you touched on it. The correlation with COVID would be a hard thing to see. You know, if you looked at that study and said, well, when did they raise the price and how did it correlate to COVID, then that'd be one thing. But let's just assume that they raised the price and it did increase sales or conversions. I'm not surprised by that. Now their sales may be smaller overall. When they're selling it at 1,000 a pop, let's say every month they were selling 100, and then but their conversion rate was really low. We're having 1,000 conversations and we're only selling 100. And then they raise it to $2,000, and suddenly their conversations drop considerably because people are self-selecting out of the buying process. So now their conversations go from 1,000 to 500, but the 500 people that they're talking to are way more targeted. They can afford 2,000. So now they convert 150 to 200 because price is not the deciding factor now. Now the deciding factor is quality. And those individuals that now they're targeting that can afford a $2,000 machine, they're probably going to make a faster decision because they assume this is a better machine. And I don't have time to go look at the market and compare. And so you do get a lot of really interesting dynamics there too. Like once you raise the price point, you get into just different decision-making processes, and the buyers are so different. You know, sometimes people that can afford more, they value their time more than going and researching 4 to 5 different competitors, and they just assume it's going to be high quality because it's high price.
Yeah. You remind me of two things. The first is uh, economics from college, the law of diminishing returns,
Yeah.
right? You can raise your prices so much, but at some point, then you lose too many customers.
Yeah. Mhm.
But the
That's right.
flip side, in the way that you told that story, it's actually a great example of narrowing your pool, but making them that
Mhm.
much more engaged or likely buyers. It's a great move.
Yes. That's right. Yeah. Yep.
The other thing that came to my mind is a book I read earlier this year called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
Mm,
And it
mm,
was, in my words, the best business book I've read in a few years. And the whole premise of the book, and it has great examples. It doesn't even, a lot of business books or self-help books, I feel like they go into examples ad nauseum. This one,
yeah.
I didn't think it did that. I think it did it appropriately. But the main essence is, as a business owner, think about how to literally 10x your business instead of 2xing. Solve bigger
Hmm.
problems than smaller problems, right? If your
Mm,
market share isn't great enough or what you forecast, fixing a feature or two may not really move the needle. But,
right.
if you 10x it, whatever it is,
Mm,
and one of the examples in the book was a company that, maybe was in shipping or something, and they had, let's say it was 80% of their clients were small ticket buyers that were causing
hmm.
exponentially more problems, challenges, work, phone calls, follow up. And this small percentage of the
Hmm.
company was spending bigger dollars and they were more hands off. And
Hmm.
the owner of the business said, all right, we're going to stop messing around with those small guys, start
Yeah.
messing with the bigger ticket guys, and their company
Yeah.
exploded.
Yeah. Well, and we see that a lot too. And it's in agencies, it is cliche that the smaller clients are just as much work as the bigger clients. And if a client has a $500 budget versus a $5,000 budget, the $500 budget is usually more high maintenance, more high touch. And it is. It's because the client that has $5,000, they're they're putting their brain sweat against different problems, and they overtly hire us to solve a direct problem, and they trust us to solve it. So they're going to be like, hey, listen, I'm not going to micromanage. I'm not going to be in the weeds. That's your job. And that's why I'm paying you $5,000. You go do it. And clients with smaller budgets, understandably, that budget is a lot to them. It might as well be $500,000, but $500 may be 80% of their budget. So they're watching it like a hawk. They're incredibly stressed out. It's a huge bet for them. And if they're placing that $500, even though in our mind it might be a small budget, it's a huge bet. So they have to watch it. They have to make sure it's going to get a return. And then human nature kicks in, which is they're going to micromanage and they're going to babysit that budget. And it's tough. And um, there's this meme that went around. It was an image and it was in a window and it was a pricing sheet. And the pricing sheet basically was like $500 if you're not involved, like you let us do our job. And then the pricing went down. The more the client got involved on the left-hand side, the higher the price got. So then at the bottom, it was like, we watched you and you do the work, and it was like $8,000. and and it's funny because, I think some clients feel like that's a knock on the agency, and it's kind of it's a reverse knock on clients of like, man, the more you're involved, the higher the price point goes because you're going to overthink everything. You're going to get stuck. You're going to have a crisis of confidence. And the next day, call us up and be like, hey, I think we need to go a different direction. Sure, we'll go that direction. And in your mind, you're driving the ship and you're doing the work. But in reality, you're having a very high end, skilled service and team pivot all the time, and you're paying for that. And then at the end, there's this weird dynamic where the client can feel like, oh, I did all the work. I was the one that had the vision. I woke up, changed it that night. I was taking a shower. I was like, what we need to do is we need to do this. And in their mind, they're mistaking activity for accomplishment. They're being very, very active, but all they're doing is they're inserting confusion in the machine that they're paying a lot of money for. The machine's pivoting to accommodate, and then they get their invoice and it's like 5x higher. And that's something else you see a lot, which is this weird psychological thing where now the client, usually it's clients that aren't as, this is going to sound mean, but sophisticated. And I don't mean that in a derogatory term, but they just don't have as much experience. So it's the clients that aren't as sophisticated because now at the end of that, they're frustrated because they feel like they did all the work. They felt like they directed everything. And now they have a higher priced thing. And it's like, exactly, you did do not all the work, but you did a lot of work and you created a lot more work. So it's just an interesting dynamic that goes around trust and transparency. And if you hire someone, trust who you hire, let them do their job. And it goes for us too. Like if we hire employees, you have to do the same thing internally. You hire a skilled employee, let them do their job, stop micromanaging.
Yeah, that's rich, truly. Because I think about what goes through my brain is twofold. The first is kind of a funny milestone. You know, I work as a coach, and I remember some of my mentors said it's a real milestone when you fire your first client. And
Mm,
so I was just thinking about some of those, not just higher maintenance clients, but those that just weren't willing to engage with the process
right.
and trust the expertise,
Yeah.
which is the second piece of something I try to do is if I hire or partner with a vendor,
Hmm.
part of the arrangement is I'm trusting and partnering with your expertise because I don't
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah. That's right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
just a thought, but I appreciate what you're saying, truly.
I love it.
Um, I'm gonna ask a question. I hope I'm not
Sure.
gonna make myself look dumb. I assume that hat is Pearl Jam, the band. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You're a
Yep.
music guy?
Yes. This
Who
is
are you?
one of my favorite Pearl Jam hats. I'm a big Pearl Jam fan. This is from their 2016 tour, so I
Cool.
got to keep it safe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who else do you listen to?
Oh man, I really like Ben Harper. I like Coldplay, actually. I like Mute Math, Shigeto, Bonobo. I like a little bit of country, not a lot. So yeah, a lot of um, depends on what I'm doing. If I'm working out, it's kind of 90s, Stained and Rage Against the Machine. If I'm chilling out, it's Pearl Jam and other stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Was the hesitation about Coldplay from what was the movie? Knocked Up or what was the movie? What
I've
you know what
never
I'm talking
seen
about?
that movie, but I haven't seen that movie, but it's funny because Coldplay they're obviously not at Nickelback level. Like if you say you like Nickelback, there's this weird spectrum. Like if you say you like Nickelback, oh man. And then in the middle is Creed. And then right on the edge is Coldplay, in my experience. Like if you say you like Coldplay, you'll either get feel like, oh, I love Coldplay, or be like, yeah, they're overdone. I don't like their stuff. And I'm like, I like Coldplay. U2, like, of course, U2 is predictable. I didn't like him in high school because I was a massive Pearl Jam fan, and U2 felt soft and it wasn't my vibe. As I've gotten older, big fan of Bono, big fan of U2. Um, just anything with really good lyrics that make you think. So,
Yeah. U2 was my very first concert.
oh, nice.
I think it was at the old Meadowlands in New Jersey. I grew up in New York,
Mm,
and I'm pretty sure it was the Zoo TV tour.
nice.
Yeah,
Man, they're good live. I've only seen them once live, and
yeah,
you saw them early,
early.
so they were probably all over the stage, high energy,
Yes,
awesome.
yeah,
It's cool. Have you ever seen
yeah.
Pearl Jam live?
I have once. I'm not a big Pearl
Yeah,
Jam guy. Not my band,
yeah.
but the show was
Well, that's
awesome.
the thing. That's the thing too about Pearl Jam is they're weirdly right down the middle too, like divisive. And it's not
Mm,
that people hate them, but a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I just never got into him, and I can't understand what he says, and he just mumbles." And then you have guys like me where it's like, man, it's a soundtrack to my life. I'll never forget my brother's 3 years older than me when he was 16 and I was 13, and he popped a cassette in his little VW Bug and started playing it, and my mind was blown. So, yeah, you just get these bands that are like soundtracks to your life, and it's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I think I came out when I was in high school or college. I can't remember, but the self-titled, if it was the first one, and then 10, was that their first two
Yes.
albums? I mean, those
Yep.
are amazing albums.
Yeah. 10 was their first.
10 was the
Yeah.
first.
Yep. And then Versus and then Vitology. But ten's the one that, like, if you're not a big Pearl Jam fan, but if you listen to 10, it's pretty hard to deny it. Like, man, there's at least three or four songs that are pretty catchy
Yes.
that'll grab you. So,
Oh, it's a great album.
mhm.
Yeah, I laugh. My buddy who's got a few tattoos got the it's like doesn't Pearl
Yeah.
Jam have that
The
like
Stick Man.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. He's got
Yep.
that somewhere on his body.
That's cool.
I don't think he's super psyched about it as a 50-year-old
Yeah.
man, but so
Well,
be
it's
it,
funny
right?
because, yeah, I like Pearl Jam a lot, but not that much.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's awesome. All right, I want to ask you about something. We talked about
Hmm.
it before we pressed record today, and You had said you wrote this 15 years ago, which I'm interested in to know maybe the mindset of when you wrote it there and how it relates to today. But you said, my work is guided by purpose, passion, simplicity, beauty, innovation, and surprise.
Hmm.
I think that's a cool saying. I mean, you
Thank you.
joked earlier, a lot of adjectives,
Hmm.
but I'm curious, what's it like hearing it? What's it like hearing that back now?
Yeah. It's pretty cool actually. Like it is a lot of adjectives, but it's kind of cool that you brought that up because I've never really had people bring it up. I did have one person actually once make an email introduction from me to someone else, and then this was an individual I'd had two or three calls with, and it was interesting because I was like, oh, I think that they actually went and took their own personal mantra and put it in their email tag, and they forgot that they did that. 2 months later when they introduced me because it was almost verbatim. But it's cool hearing it back because it's just a good reminder of, I'm 45 years old in this part of my life with, the four kids that my wife and I have and where we're at. And inevitably you start to get, hopefully not for me, hopefully it's not a midlife crisis, but you start to think about everything. Your friends are going through tough things in life. You start to lose friends. You have friends going through illness. You have friends that are getting divorced. You have friends in career crisis mode. And it's kind of cool to hear that of like, man, when I wrote that, I was probably 31, 32. It's just a good reminder of like whatever it was at that time that was within me to purpose to write those things down and say, I want to put out a signal in the world to let people know that when they work with me, these are the guiding principles. It's kind of cool to hear that back because as you get older, I find it's easier for me to almost just get very tactical. Like, okay, we're going to work together. Great. I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm really good at it. What do you need? What job do you have to be done? How are we going to help you? And it's kind of cool to hear that back because going back to what we started with, if people base decisions on emotion and I'm trying to maybe convince or have people decide if they want to work with me, it's probably important that they understand what drives me. So maybe I should bring those things back.
Maybe. Huh.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes when I'm in front of the room as a trainer, I have this spiel, which I say, follow the breadcrumbs of your mind.
Mm,
Undoubtedly, I or someone else will say something. It'll remind you of this other thing, which takes you back to this time of life, which brings you to whatever, right? So
mm,
breadcrumbs. So you were talking about where you were at 31, 32 years old to write those words. It's cool hearing it back.
mm,
As one man to another, I lean into those words. And
mm,
so, yes, if I was considering you as a design guy for me, that would carry a lot of weight.
mm,
Um, Tactically and tangibly, my brain went to we're approaching the new year. There's always a lot of
mm,
hoopla about New Year's resolutions.
mm,
Without getting on my soapbox, I don't feel like I've got things to resolve per se, but I like to write goals.
mm.
And I'm curious, do you have any New Year's rituals?
Uh, Rituals, we do kind of the traditional thing. Well, so for New Year's is pretty traditional. Like the family stays up, we play games, stay up till midnight, we do all those things, and then as a family, the first week of the new year, we'll go to a movie in the theater together, kind of as an activity as a family. And then on a personal note, like New Year's rituals that I would try to create that would have residual effect throughout the year. Um, I don't have anything big. I think it's just trying to reflectively look back and see what are the things that happened this year that I'm grateful for. And then I think it's important to kind of take stock of everything that happened that year, good and bad, because it's really easy to just generalize and say, man, this year flew by. I can't believe it's December already. And here we go next year. And then pretty soon you're looking towards the future, which I think is great. Like there's part of me when I'm doing my work or I'm thinking about what I want to do next, I would rather spend more of my time thinking about the future than critiquing my past. But the end of the year is just a nice natural moment to say, okay, I'm not critiquing the past, but how can I take stock of the things that happened in the last 12 months? And how can I identify those things that I should be grateful for? How can I identify those things that were frustrating at the time, but they just turned out to be really good life lessons? And how do I actually kind of retrospectively take stock of the year and then take those good things and then push that in the next year? And it's not a really long exercise. It's not, 4 days of meditation. It's usually just kind of the last couple days. You're just kind of sitting on it, thinking about it. And then for the new year, trying to identify what is kind of one big thing that I'd measure as success for this year. Because one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is for me, it's more overwhelming if I put too many things on my list versus, what's one big sort of vision thing, what's a medium thing, and then the small things I don't even mention because there's just a ton of small things. But, for this year, a big goal may be where do we want to be as a business or as a family? Do we want to take this like a family vacation or something? So that's sort of the rituals I guess I would do.
Yeah, I dig it. I like
Cool.
the vision of the family playing the games and going to the movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another breadcrumb for me. I remember going to see was it Castaway? Was that the Tom Hanks movie?
Oh, yes.
We,
Wilson.
we saw it in the
Wilson.
theater, me and my cousins,
Yeah.
and when Wilson, starts floating away, the whole theater is somber.
Oh, no
And
way. Really?
I don't know if I'm embarrassed or happy to tell you, me and my cousin Sal burst out into laughter because of like, well, I can't even say why,
Yeah.
but we just started laughing. We thought it was pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. That movie, it's an interesting one because it's a really good movie, but I've never been able to pull myself to watch it again.
Yeah.
Because it's so slow and but there's other movies that are really slow, but I enjoy watching them multiple times. But that was a pretty good movie
Yeah.
with a little bit of a twist ending as well.
Yeah.
So,
I remember
uh,
why I remember I still think about if that was me, I would have been fucked. There's no way I would
yeah,
have been able to figure all
yeah,
that out.
I would have too. I would have died after the first, however long you could last with no food. That's how long it would have lasted,
Yeah.
and not a minute longer. Yeah, I would have. I've been dead so fast. Yeah, yeah.
um, the other part of your statement that I read earlier, it's just separated here in my notes the way I wrote it or the way my colleague had shared it with me, was live deliberately.
Mhm.
And earlier you said it still got some relevance, but maybe change. It may be
Yeah,
in the midst of changing. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about it.
yeah. It's something I came up with prior to all those adjectives, and it was when my wife and I were about to have our first child, and I don't think I came up with it. I think I saw it somewhere, and I liked it a lot. So I kind of jotted it down. It's just a good reminder that as tired as I may be and as hard as life may get, it's really easy to kind of check out at times. Come home from work and be like, I'm really tired. I don't need to check in and plug in with my wife and my kid. And it was just a good reminder of like everything I do should be very deliberate. It should be very intentional. So if I'm about to spend an hour of my life doing something, do I want to be just zoning out watching TV or do I want to go exercise or do I want to read a book or just being deliberate about where I put my time and my energy? And what I was sharing with you that I have thought about changing it to, but I don't know. It's a little bit more heady and I don't know if it's as easy of a get is live actualized. And I would be stealing that from Bruce Lee. So I'm listening to Bruce Lee's biography that's written by his daughter, read by his daughter for audiobook. It's really good. I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. And it's called Be Like Water. And it's sort of the lessons of Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee, as we know, is one of the greatest martial artists of all time. Phenomenal athlete. But he was as active in his mind as he was in his physicality. He was a philosopher. He was very big into how do you be fully present? How do you be like this empty vessel so that you can actually absorb and just be like water? You flow with things. There's times where you need to be strong and there's times where you need to be fluid and there's times where, you can't really grasp it, but it's still there. It's still a thing. And so the book, they use the word actualized. Like if you can start to get to that where you're actualized and it's not a state of finality or a state that you get to where like, I'm actualized, I'm perfect. It's just more the notion that you're actually always being mindful and thinking about just your own presence and how you absorb things and how you operate in life. That's what they mean more by actualized. Because actualized as a word is kind of weird. It feels like it's a final state. Like if you're actualized, it's like, oh, you've reached your end state. And it's not that at all. It's more of actualized is like actually continually learning and being. And it's that concept of like, you want to just be better. You don't want to be better than, you because if you start saying I'm better than and you add the word then, all you're doing is you're comparing yourself to other businesses, other colleagues, other athletes, other people. I want to be better than this. Or even, I want to be better than myself. Well, don't add the word then, just say better. Just how do you just always be better? Just how do you always kind of be in that state of mind? So it's sort of this loftier thing. I've thought about changing it to that because that for me, like that's on my personal email tag is live deliberately. And that's just to again show people like that's my own mentality. But I don't know, I'll probably change it because I'm a big believer in mantras and little things that you tell yourself, and words matter. And this is another Bruce Lee thing, but he's talking about the power of words, and he said he had this quote somewhere, and I'm going to butcher it, but the essence is they call it spelling for a reason. Words can put a spell on you. So whatever words you use to tell yourself have power. So just make sure you're talking like self talk is really really important. So that mantra for me is probably more like self-talk and self-guidance.
Man, I dig it. I do.
Cool.
Um, do you have any tips, tricks, practices about how you stay present?
That's a good one. Because I'm not that great at staying present.
Me neither.
I lately, what I've been trying to do is on a very tactical side in the morning. I try to get a workout in the morning. I try not check my phone. I know it's cliche, but it works. Even to the point where when I'm done working out and I'm at the gym, I've showered, I've grabbed my bag and I'm walking out to my car. I just force myself to like just leave my phone in my pocket. Leave my phone in my pocket, get in the car, call my wife on my way into work, like don't check email, don't check. So there's things that like there's activities I try to do to be fully present in preparation. And I would call that like a cold state. My mind is in a cold state. There's nothing that's hit me that stressed me out, caused anxiety. So I wake up and in theory, although being a business owner, you're always sort of in a hot state because you're always thinking about something. But in theory, the first start of my day, I'm in a cold state. So there are things that I would try to do to probably be fully present when I'm in a cold state. And that's more preventative. Okay, I know that if I'm about to go in this meeting, I should probably not look at email or anything for the next 15 minutes. And I should just like get prepped for this meeting. So I'm in a cold state preparing for the thing. So there's a difference of being fully present when you're in a cold state, and that's more preparation. And then when you're in a hot state and something's hitting you, that to me is a different state of being fully present. Because when you're in a hot state, it's not about preparation, it's about response. So how do I absorb whatever's coming at me right now? And then how do I absorb that in a way where I can feel all the feels? Because you shouldn't just brush it off, but allow yourself to sit with it for a second and really acknowledge how do I feel in this moment? Someone said something, someone did something, I got an email, something happened. So how am I feeling in this moment? And then trying to figure out a way to like, okay, so how do I actually absorb it and then kind of let it flow through you in a way, which is like in order to be fully present, what am I actually able to do right now? And if I can't do anything about it, I'm just gonna have to be okay with that. And I'm gonna have to be able to process the information, feel how I feel about it, let it flow through, and then say I can't do anything about it right now, but I'm going to have a conversation with so and so next time I see them. And then once you kind of think about that activity, next time I see them, I'll have a conversation, just leave it over there and stop thinking about it. Like, cool, decision's made. Next time I see him, I'll talk about that. Or next time this happens, I'll talk about it. But that's for that moment in time, that's when that will happen. But going back to what I'm doing right now, how do I do that? And even as I'm saying that, like that feels very tactical and like I'm sure if I talked to someone that was really good at mindfulness and meditation, they'd probably be like, those are all tactics. Like you're still not being fully present. But I don't know. Probably not very good at it.
I mean, comparative, right? Talk to someone else that is better at mindfulness is maybe more present, right? You were saying earlier about not doing the comparison better than. So just
Yeah.
point that out. You're
Hmm.
present as you are. And this
Yeah.
is a little bit of the coach in me talking, right? Like you can't be any more present than
Yeah.
you are. So you're doing something. And I appreciate the tactics too, because before something becomes habit or second nature, it's got to be at least, well, maybe I shouldn't say that definitively. I think there's an element of we have to be conscious about the tactic to get used to
Yeah.
doing it before it becomes natural second nature
Yeah.
or an unconscious thing. And I
That's
relate
right.
to a lot of what you're saying. Um,
Hmm.
I will admit I'm the guy that used to look at his phone in the bathroom, and I've made a deliberate change that I'm no longer doing that. And it's tough. Sometimes I touch my phone and start to put it back in. But what
Yep.
I've noticed is even as long or short as I might be in the restroom, without the phone, I am thinking and I am present.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
different gig.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. I'm it depends on when you catch me in terms of what I'm about to say, but there for a while I deleted like Threads, Twitter, Insta, and Facebook off my phone because it would force me to, as soon as I pick up my phone and want to chase away boredom, like, okay, well, I can't do any of that. So I either have to go exercise, have to go physically do something, or if I'm going to do something with my phone, the only things that I can do with my phone right now is text someone, call someone, or, open up a browser and go look at the news. But, I can no longer like port, transport myself to an alternate reality called Facebook and just start doom scrolling. And the reason why I'm not super great, I did it for like a week or two and it was great. And then it just sucks you back in where it's like, I need to sell something. I need to download Facebook because Marketplace is great. And I need to move some stuff. Or I do a lot of card collecting. So a lot of card groups I'm in, part of in Facebook is like, well, I might miss a really good card because if they put it up for sale and it's a good deal, I'm not going to see it because I don't have Facebook on my phone. I only have it on my laptop. And I really, really am getting sort of anti-laptop. Like I leave my laptop at the office as often as I can. There's something about opening, like the act of opening up a screen in a laptop that feels like I'm immediately going into work mode, which is great when I'm at work. But when I'm at home, I have such a disdain for that feeling now of like sitting down with my laptop and opening it up because that act just feels like I'm opening it up to do work, and now I'm like, I don't want to do that when I go home, so I try to leave my laptop at work but
Yeah, I appreciate that. We all have our things.
yeah.
Another breadcrumb. I can't remember who, but some guy I was listening to must have been a podcast or something, and he was talking about how many people will say, "Do not look at a screen before bed."
Yeah.
And for him in his life, he said it just doesn't work for him. But he did
Mm,
appreciate the impact of the blue light. So
yeah.
he talked about this setting on his iPhone that he created that I put on
Hmm.
mine. And not that I look at my phone in bed, but if you hit this button 3 times, it gives you like a red screen. So you
Mm,
have red light, which is supposed to be a little bit
hmm.
better on the eyes at bedtime. And so anyway, just the
Hmm.
uniqueness of everything, right?
Yeah.
Like the laptop, there's disdain about opening that and takes you
Right.
into work mode, so you don't do it.
Totally. Yeah, it's a really good point. Is just the balance and people. That's kind of the thing now is people say it's not work, it's not life, it's not work-life balance, it's just balance. And that's the thing is I think it's so important for everybody to not be too harsh on themselves or others where we all just have different flow, where it's like we have 4 kids. So for my wife and I, sometimes if we go on a date or if we're hanging out with our kids at 9:30, 10 at night, it's like we're not going to be able to go to bed at 9 and get 8 full hours of sleep. And you talk to other people, friends that don't have kids, and man, sleep is so important. You need to be getting 8 hours of sleep. And it's like, okay, but you balance like I want to kind of get up early to work out. I want to stay up to hang out with my kids, my wife. So this is balance. So if I can make it work on 6 hours of sleep, it's okay. So,
Yeah, I completely resonate and agree with that sentiment. I
mm,
don't think balance in the life perspective, whether it's work-life balance or just balance or however we want to describe it, is balance is not always 50-50 or
right.
even 33,
Yeah.
33, 33, or whatever. Like
No.
balance is unique to everybody.
Yeah. It's a good word where it's not literally 50-50. It's not literally balance. Yeah. Speaking of something I heard around nighttime routines that did resonate with me was we're talking to the Colorado Sleep Institute about potentially doing some work. And the founder, Adam, I met with him yesterday, and he said this thing that was really cool. And it stuck with me where he said, as parents, we help teach our kids routine before bedtime. It's super important. We'll get ready for bed, get your pajamas on, we'll read a book for 15 minutes, we'll take downtime. And he said it's weird that as adults, somewhere along the line, we're like, we lose that desire to do routine. And he was talking about a big part of it is as you get older as kids, you start to realize, oh, my parents don't do routines before bed. So it's almost like monkey see, monkey do. And like they're packing everything they can in before they go to bed. So one, it gets passed down. And then two, it's just weird that as adults, we don't do for ourselves what we feel is really important for our kids. So whatever that routine is, if you go to bed at midnight every night and you're not getting a full 8 hours, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. But do you have a routine where starting at 11, we start doing this and then this and then so that the sleep I do get is the best sleep I can get?
Yeah. It's funny. My dad used to say, do as I say, not as I do.
I know. I've used it with my kids a lot too. Yeah. Like I'm not a great example. Just trying. The words I'm saying are way more important than the actions I'm doing.
Yeah.
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 It's
Uh,
awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation.
yeah. Me too.
We're just about at our close. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to?
Well, I have a question for you. What is something that, like, what's a guiding principle that you have in your life that is your go-to? Like, what's your version of my deliberately? What's your go-to?
Man, uh, I have two answers. The first is speak up.
Hmm.
What I find in my work in my life for myself and the people I interact with is at the core of almost every challenge, if not every challenge, it seems that miscommunication is at its core.
Yeah.
And all too often, the miscommunication for me is I've spoken up, but not with courtesy and discretion and respect. It gets a little pointed and aggressive. And for others, it's the exact opposite to the point where they don't.
Yeah.
And so part of that speak up is not just a matter of speaking up and being the loudest voice, but be a voice, say your
Hmm.
piece, use discretion. If it makes sense to hold back, great. If it makes sense to speak up, do it. So speak up, even though those two words maybe literally mean talk more, I think there's a lot more to it.
Hmm.
So that's one.
Hmm.
The second is when I went through my coaching program, there was a whole module on values. And it just so happens my very first coach took me through a values exercise that
Hmm.
I've now borrowed from her and made electronic on my website.
Hmm.
I share that one for a shameless plug, and two, because I've taken it myself. And my top values are freedom and adventure, which I put together, flexibility,
Hmm.
connection, comfort, health, and wellness.
Hmm.
And those five drive a lot of my life.
Hmm.
Like you, when I'm present and I am seeing the world more slowly, I see these five values and where I'm compromising them or honoring them.
Hmm.
When life is moving fast, I hope innately I embody them to some degree.
Hmm.
But like these things are important. If I'm not having
Yeah.
adventure, I'm bored,
Yeah.
I get angsty and all these kinds of things. So there's a lot more to
Hmm.
unpack there, but it's this speak up and then it's those values that really drive me.
Hmm. Those are good. Those are really good. The value sets are really good. Speak up is spot on. It's not just about talking loud, it's talking more deliberate or more, more focused. And it's super important. Like most frustrations stem from unmet expectations, which stem from poor communication. So those are good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Something about unmet expectations. I feel like I heard that about should.
Oh, should. So I have a buddy that works at Nike. His name's Josh McLean, and he had this great I had a conversation once with him, and he was saying, people should eliminate the word should. And it's like, it's funny because he just said should, or maybe he said people need to eliminate the word should. And that just stuck with me because it's such a great thing where it's like, I should do this, I should do that, I should. And it just immediately puts these expectations on every single statement you say, rather than maybe it's cool for me to try this, or I wonder if I would enjoy doing this, or I wonder if what I'm doing at work right now is the best thing I should be doing versus I should be working more. So it was just a cool conversation with him where he was talking about should is such a limiting.
It is. I wonder is a very coachy thing. And a client of
Yeah.
mine pointed that out to me a while ago. And I would say, I wonder what would happen if you tried that. And he said it worked for him, right? So the I
Yeah.
wonder is legit.
Uh-huh.
The other thing
Yeah.
is I I try to avoid using should as often as I can. And when I hear my clients use it, depending on the context, what I will lean more into is you're either willing or unwilling to do,
Mhm.
experience, say, whatever. So it's a willing or
Mhm.
unwillingness. It's not a should or shouldn't.
Mhm.
So it is a little bit of a
Mhm.
reframe.
Yeah. I like that. It's good.
John, you're a deep thinker, man. I dig it.
Oh, well, thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Likewise. This is
You
a fun conversation.
yeah, you did not disappoint. Um,
Well,
the way you showed up here today is very much what I experienced in our first introduction.
cool.
So thank you for being free
Yeah,
flowing. We covered a lot of ground. I think it was cool ground.
me
And
too.
I appreciate it. It was nice to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Take care.
Okay, cheers.